Welcome to another episode of Dad Up, everyone. Thank you guys very much for joining me. I'm excited for the individual I have on today. It's a little bit of a different take on us as parents and how we can better protect our families and our kids in particular. But my good friend, he and I have just recently connected. So my good friend Jason Brick has joined me on Dad Up. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Howdy, Brian. Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's dive right in. Tell me a little bit about your backstory, and then obviously, I know you just wrote a book and all that, but you're also, focused on safety first for our parents and our kids. So let's dive right into it.
Sure thing. Long story made as short as possible. Spent the first most of my teenage years, or early adulthood, and then the first half of my adult life as a martial arts instructor. Did some bodyguard work, some bouncing work, ran a martial arts school full time. That thing. And then two things happened. First of them was I adopted a 7-year-old boy. And this was an in-family adoption where his parents became medically incapable of taking care of him.
Mm,
So it was like 2 weeks suddenly have a child. This wasn't, trying for a year with your wife and then having 9 months of warning or the adoption process, which often takes years. It was suddenly new responsibilities. And the weekend before he came to be our family, we I was in a seminar doing some gun disarms with a couple of people, and I noticed that almost all of these techniques that I believed in, they pull the barrel past you and then push it downward to take advantage of leverage, which put the barrel at about the height of a head of a 7-year-old child.
mm.
Who, and behind me, which is where I'd have my child standing if I were ever in a situation like that. And I kind of started thinking about how little this, decades of sports martial arts and bouncing kind of martial arts and security prepared me to take care of my child. And that's the stuff I was good at, let alone, fire suppression, first aid, psychology, all these other aspects of personal health. And I was lucky enough to have some very, very good coaches. And so they all taught me if you don't know something, go find someone who does. And
Mm.
so the first thing I did was reach out to some bodyguards that I knew about techniques to protect a second person rather than the kind of one-on-one stuff most martial arts focus on. And then I noticed that, they talk a little bit about the punching and the kicking and the stabbing and the shooting, but they're also really big on making sure they've got good driving chops, making sure their first aid skills are up to date and above just the Red Cross certification. They're all about nutrition and psychology. And so from those people, I started finding anybody I could to tell me about protecting kids and just wringing them dry of information. Second thing that happened was as soon as I'd spent 6 months with this 7-year-old, this second grader in my house, I realized that running a martial arts school is an evenings and weekends job, which didn't let me be the dad I wanted to be.
Mm.
I was fortunate enough to have a little bit of a talent with writing. And while I was running my martial arts school, I was writing all my ad copy, writing a blog for the website, had a column in the local paper about safety. And I was able to turn that into a freelance writing and journalism career. And did that for 15 years. And then, like a lot of folks, I had what I call my COVID seizure, where in the middle of sitting around, I said, "Hey, I'll have a podcast. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross the streams of my interview skills as a journalist and my knowledge of the safety sphere from my martial arts career and my responsibilities as a father." And so I started the Safest Family on the Block podcast, where I interview whoever I can find. And again, most people who are talking about family safety or martial arts today, they're interested in crime prevention. And I have those guys. I'll have a police officer on one week and a special ops guy another week. Had a CIA agent on to talk about tradecraft as parents there. But I'll also have an EMS captain, and then a nutritionist and a suicide counselor, and just anybody who knows anything about making my family and your family marginally safer. I get them on the show and we talk.
And you have so just a 7-year-old?
I have so he was 7 then. That was quite some time ago. He's 25 now,
Oh,
and
okay.
and I've got a 15-year-old who's homegrown as well.
Okay. All right, cool. And has safety always been in your kind of your world even as you grew up, or is that something you just kind of developed as you got older?
So fear was part of my world growing up. I
Yeah.
always feel bad. Every parent makes their mistakes, and I was the oldest, so I was the rough draft, as we like to call me.
Right.
Um, And my parents were fantastic parents, but my mom was a very anxious person. And from a very early age, I was able to pick up on that anxiety, but I wasn't old and mature enough yet to see the things she did to keep me safe. And that made me a very fearful and anxious kid. And I'll leave it to the imagination of your viewers whether or not that had anything to do with me joining martial arts.
Right, right.
Yeah. And
I
so fear was a part of it. And then safety, finding the solutions to those fears became followed up after a while.
yeah. And I think when it comes to protecting our kids,
Mhm.
back when I was growing up, when you were growing up, it was all around, the fear of being kidnapped. So they would tell
Mhm.
you, they would teach you don't talk to strangers and all that kind of stuff. But now it's gone so much further where
Mhm.
you have even the fear of social media
Yeah.
and kids interacting with what they think might be other kids online, but they're really not. They're adults. And so you have those types of predators too.
Yeah.
So how does that play into what you do now? Do you teach that side of things as well?
Absolutely. And that's one of the big ones. One of the biggest things that experts in child safety know and have been trying to fight since the 90s, but the word doesn't get out is that stranger danger was terrible, terrible advice.
Right.
Right? Because, there's a lot of reasons. The two of the biggest ones are number one, the overwhelming majority of people who hurt our kids are going to be people they know or people we know. Just overwhelming majority. It's not the guy in the van who wants them to help them find a puppy. It's the soccer coach. And it's
Right.
a sad reality of life. Now, I'm not saying that that stranger abduction doesn't happen. It does, and it's tragic and horrible when it does. But we need to make sure our kids are prepared for the real dangers. The other thing that stranger danger does is it teaches our kids that they can't take care of themselves if they lose track of us. A child who needs help, if they're around an adult they know, they don't need help. They're getting help
Hmm.
from the adult they know. So we need to teach our kids that if they need help and they can't find any of their people, which strangers are safe to approach. And for the younger kids, there's a great little thing for to have them memorize, which is if you can't find your family, find someone else's family. Because an adult with children is statistically the least likely to hurt a child they don't know. And also, you're a dad. If a 7-year-old came up to you and said, "I can't find my dad," helping them find their dad is now your plan for the day,
Right. Right.
right? And so those are two reasons that I'm sure you've heard this that stranger danger is bad advice. And
Yeah.
so we need to give the right advice and teach parents how to talk to their kids about that, how to train them about that, and how to practice it when you're out to dinner, for example, and to say, hey, if I wasn't around, which of these adults would you go to for help, and why did you choose that person, so they can kind of examine it. And then you mentioned the internet, and that's a huge issue. And yeah, we do deal with some of the internet safety issues. And again, there are more strangers trying to victimize people on the internet there, but there's also, again, it's going to be somebody who kind of slides in, maybe on social media, but right now most often in-game chat.
Hmm.
And either it is somebody they know a little bit, or somebody who claims to be somebody they know a little bit, or somebody who knows somebody they know, and then develops that relationship and exploits them in whatever nefarious way they have in mind.
Yeah. And then the other area that I was thinking about when it comes to what you do, what about the sex trafficking side of things, where there's a lot of that going on,
Yeah.
especially over the last, 5 to 10 years. That has
Mm.
really picked up as far as the number of not
Yeah.
only young girls, but also boys that are taken for sex trafficking and how to protect our kids against that kind of exploitation.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna go a little counter to the narrative right now. So a lot of people are worried about sex trafficking, and sex trafficking has a lot of different uh, faces. There's a lot of different kinds of sex trafficking or human trafficking in general, uh, and it's real, and it happens, and when it happens, it's tragic. But for middle class suburban families, it's extraordinarily rare. There's a woman named Shelley Rep who runs an organization in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is, I'm sure you've heard, is not a particularly savory city.
Right.
And she works with traffic, finds and releases trafficked teens and young adults. Every single one of the people that she has worked with, who she was able to rescue and was able to talk to about it, left a home where they were being abused,
Mm.
physically, sexually, or both. And then if you're talking about other ways that bad guys can approach kids and pull them into trafficking, just like people who are looking to groom them for molestation. The crack in the armor that they get into is a feeling of not being appreciated or listened to at home,
Hmm.
or not having an adult they can go to trust.
Right.
There's, for example, the sextortion thing where bad guy finds a teenager, pretends to form a romantic relationship, asks them for a nude photo, and then as soon as they send that, they're like, haha, you just created and distributed child pornography, and I will tell the FBI immediately if you don't blank.
Right.
And eventually that blank escalates to meet me somewhere where they're then taken and trafficked. And so the solution, like for so many things, is keeping that open door, being that resource instead of the. I mean, you and I are probably about the same age. If we got in trouble at school, we knew the second dad found out, he
Hmm.
was going to make our day worse.
Right.
And not being that person who listens, gives him a big hug, said, "Man, you screwed up, but I'm not going to give you additional arbitrary consequences at home. The world's going to kick you hard enough. Thank you very much. I'm not going to help you avoid the consequences that you've earned, but I'm going to be here as a support, be here as a safe place, and I'm going to walk with you to help you meet the consequences of your bad decisions with grace and maturity."
Yeah.
And if you have that relationship where they trust you with their problems, when that, if they make that big mistake and they get that sextortion text or whatever, they're going to come to you and say, "Hey, Dad, how do we fix this?"
Right.
Not, "Oh my God, the last thing in the world I want is for my dad to find out."
Right.
And that's the best way to protect our kids from trafficking.
Yeah, and I think I mean, you're talking about a complete. I mean, you're literally speaking my language because I talk to dads all the time. I talk to parents all the time about really developing that bond and that trust, that relationship with that child, not at a teenage age, but at a young age, at a very young
Mm.
age, where you start to develop that relationship and build that trust with them to where they can come home and feel like their home is their safe place.
Yeah.
Where if no matter what it is that they did or didn't do that they may or may not get in trouble for, they can
Mm.
come home and go to mom and dad and know that mom and dad will be there to support them and help them through whatever the situation is. And I think a lot of times you find that parents can put up those little walls where kids may not feel extremely safe at home to open up and share what's on their mind or share what's bothering them for the fear of disappointing, for the
Mm.
fear of making mom and dad upset, for the fear of getting in trouble, for the fear of not being loved. And then
Yeah.
that catapults into other areas where not even just being groomed by somebody online, but also by bad influences and the friends that they hang out with. They look
Yeah.
for, we're talking about like gang affiliations and things like that that kids get into to feel that sense of belonging, that sense of love, that sense of relationship with somebody that they think they trust and know. And so for parents, I tell them this all the time that listen, you have to really start to develop that bond and relationship with them. Make your kids feel like they can come to you,
Yeah.
whether they've done something wrong or not, that they can come to you and share with you what's on their mind. And you have to be there with an open heart and an open mind and listen to them and really hear them, not speak back to them, not interrupt them, really hear them
Yeah.
because there's going to be a message in there that they're trying to tell you
Mm.
that may shock you, may not, but it could open up doors to where you can really help that child and they'll feel safe and loved. And that will protect them even more when they go outside the home and things do get tricky.
Absolutely. See also abuse of romantic partners. Um,
Exactly.
and which is a safety factor that a lot of people don't think about or don't want to think about. Two really good opportunities for that, I feel, when our kids are really young, is grades and what they want to be when they grow up.
Hmm.
Like in a lot of households that, hey, I screwed up on my homework, and then it's a war, right? where if you can be your partner there and stifle, because if a second grader's got bad marks, that's not about the second grader's success. That's about your ego and your fear
Right.
about what you can tell your brother whose kids are perfect about how your kid's doing. Or you're concerned that, well, if they keep this up, they're not going to get into a good college, they can't get into a good college, and et cetera, et cetera. It's not about them, it's about us. And we
Hmm.
need to stuff that down. And for the moment, we need to be able to vent, but we're not going to vent in front of our kids and talk to them about, work with them to solve the problem instead of try to bully them into compliance. And then the other one is what they want to be when they grow up, because a
Hmm.
lot of parents are, well, I think I wanted to be, underwater basket weaver when I grow up.
Hmm.
Sure, okay, buddy, let's take a look, do some research into how you can be the best damn underwater basket weaver that the world ever saw, instead of, no, 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 you're going to be a doctor, you know. And those are two early conversations where our kids are asking us, do you love me even if I do something you don't like? That's the question that's being asked when those things pop up. And those are two early ways that we can say absolutely enthusiastically, yes, let's go do this thing.
Yeah. And for me, it was the same thing with my boys. My boys knew at a very early age, they're 26 and 23 now. My boys knew at a very early age that no matter what it is that they may have messed up with or did wrong or didn't do that they were supposed to do, they could always come to their mom or me and talk to us about it. And we're not going to get upset. We're not going to ground them. We're not going to punish them. We're going to hear them out. We're going to help them through it, and we're going to help them fix the situation that they may be in. I did tell my boys that doesn't mean that I may not. I mean, there doesn't mean that I won't be disappointed in you. I may be disappointed in the decision that you made or the decision that you didn't make, but that doesn't mean I love you any less. And
Yeah.
so my boys knew that my door was always open for them, and that's the relationship that I have with them to this day. To this day, at grown adults where they don't have to listen to mom and dad, they don't have to rely on mom and dad at all, they're off doing their own thing. They still call me and ask me for advice. They still call me and ask me, hey, in this situation, I'm not quite sure how to handle it. What do
Yeah.
you think I should do? And I can give them my opinion and give them advice on how based on my experiences, how they should handle it, and they can take it or leave it. But they know, whether they take it or leave it, they know that they're making that decision based on how they feel they should do it. So,
I think every that's one of those great moments that I hope every dad gets to have, where their 20 something kid calls them on the phone at 11 at night and says, I have a problem. What should I do?
yep.
You don't want your kid to have a problem, but you love it feels like you did the job right if they're calling you for advice, knowing that what's not going to happen is you yell at them for screwing up.
Right. And that's something that is not in our level of communication. There's no, I mean, what sense does it make for me as a dad of a 26-year-old to sit there and yell at him for the
Yeah.
decision that he made? You're a grown ass adult, dude. You
Yeah.
made the decision. Now we've got to work through it, and I'm going to help you work through it. But for me to sit here and yell at you about it makes absolutely zero sense. It's not going to get
Yeah.
anywhere, and it's just going to create a rift in between us. So,
Yeah.
um,
I mean, my kids know I'm going to break their balls a little about it, but it's,
right,
it's friendly Josh is a different thing.
right, yeah, there may be that kind of stuff going on, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you've interviewed a lot of people on your podcast.
Mhm.
I know you've even interviewed a spy. I mean, what's one of the most surprising, maybe unexpected tips that you've gotten that you've learned from in maybe a guest that you've interviewed?
So the biggest one is what we just talked about not being that drill sergeant dad that I think a lot of us were raised with the model of. That was
Right.
life changing. To the point that my oldest, who was a grown ass adult by the time I started the podcast, did not get the benefit from. And so he'll break my balls a little bit when he sees me doing different with his younger brother. But we have the joke about, dude, you were the rough draft. Come on, and it's good. We found ways to joke about it, but that was the biggest one. A couple of the others are some other important safety myths. Although one of the most surprising one came from my very first interview, which was with a college roommate of mine who at the time was in charge of medical response for San Francisco International Airport. And the conversation was, hey, what are 10 things that parents can do so that you see their kids less in a professional fashion? Like, what should we do or stop doing? And he told me that parents still aren't strapping their kids in. in the car, which amazed me. It's like, guys, come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. I just,
But other than that, a couple of other, kind of myths. One of the big ones is, how, we're recording this in early spring. So we got what, 3 or 4 weeks before the first news article breaks where some toddler or infant was left in the backseat of a car on a hot day and
right.
didn't make it. And we imagine that parent, and we're imagining somebody really irresponsible who's tapping away on their phone and probably drunk or high. But overwhelmingly, that's not the person that this happens to. Overwhelmingly, it's a responsible parent who's not the usual person that takes that kid to daycare. And
Okay.
it's so you've got, you know, mom usually takes them to daycare, but mom's sick, mom has a meeting, something like that. So dad hops in the car, puts the kid in the back, and because autopilot's a thing, just goes to work. And if, anybody listening, if you don't think autopilot's a thing, when was the last time you drove home from work
Right.
and pulled into your driveway with no memory at all of the trip?
Right.
And if it's been more than a month, I would be shocked.
Right.
So autopilot happens, and especially when kids are the age young enough that they're vulnerable to that, we are still in the middle of deep sleep deprivation, and so you're staggering through the morning like it's a zombie movie, and the autopilot kicks in, and then so we're all vulnerable to this possibility during that age. And it's not because we're irresponsible. It's not because we're terrible. It's because the human brain works in a certain way.
Right.
And then every time that week that first article happens where that happened to a family and that's tragic, then you get that follow up with some advice about, hey, to prevent this for yourself, put your phone in the back seat, put your briefcase
Hmm.
in the back seat to remind you. And then come the snarky memes about, yeah, put something important in your back seat, making fun of the kid. But it's not the importance, it's the automaticness of it,
Right.
where you pull into the driveway at work and you reach to the passenger seat for your briefcase. And you're like, huh, where's my briefcase? Oh, right, it's in the back seat. Oh, and then you cuss and you drive to daycare, and it
Right.
solves the problem.
Right.
But it's a real illustration that even parents who have it together, there are little things that we don't pick up on, little things we don't know because we're not professionals in a certain sphere, and vulnerabilities that we can acknowledge exist and then fix with something really super easy, like putting our phone in the back seat, which, by the way, also keeps us from texting and driving with our kid in the car.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, yeah. I have some backseat moments with my boys that yeah, I just told this story on another episode, but my wife used to put her purse in the back seat as a reminder. She
Yeah.
would reach in the back seat because my son was in his car seat, and he happened to figure out how to unbuckle himself. How my wife didn't know he was unbuckled. She wasn't paying attention. She was oblivious to it. But he unbuckled himself and got into her purse and pulled out a red lipstick and decided to make the inside of my car an art museum. So
Ah,
I had red lipstick all over the inside of my headliner and all over him, all over the car seat, all over the seat, all over the back of the seat. It was just a mess. Anyways, that's a little sidebar. But one of the things that I think about, I had an experience myself as a child that it's crazy the things that traumatize us that we still remember. And I don't exactly remember how old I was. I know I was very young, but I remember being at the county fair with my parents and some other relatives. I remember it clear as day, like it just happened yesterday, but I got lost from my parents. They weren't paying attention, got separated, and then realized that I'm in the middle of a bunch of other people that I didn't know, and I panicked. And I remember specifically my parents teaching me that there's these security tents set up that looked like, they had like yellow or, yellow tents or whatever. And I remember them teaching me that if we got lost, that I was to go find one of those places. So even though I was upset and panicked, I still remember going to find one of those tents and asking the person about, telling the person that I'd lost my parents and I couldn't find them. And they shouted over the loudspeaker my mom's name. And then a short time later, my mom, crying her eyes out, came running up, and everything was fine. But those little moments that we teach our kids when something happens is super important. You may not think that they will comprehend it or understand it or work through it, but you'd be surprised when a person, a child, or even an adult is put in a panic situation, what their mind gets them to do, what their body tells them to do. And it drew me to an instance with my own son, who I had taken to a NASCAR event. He and I were really big in the NASCAR, and he was about 6, maybe 7. And I had taken him to this event, NASCAR race, and I taught him the same thing. I showed him the security tents, what they look like, but I also put my phone number on a piece of paper and put it in his pocket
Hmm.
and told him, if we get lost or separated, I want you to go to one of these tents and I want you to give them the phone number so that they can call me and I can come to you. And we never got separated, but it's important lessons like that we teach our
Yeah.
kids, not to panic them, not to freak them out, but just as a separate issue or a separate safety measure that we put in place to protect our kids. Um,
Absolutely. I think it's really important because I thought a lot of people will push back to that idea by saying, well, I don't want to scare my kid.
right,
But the thing is that if they're old enough to understand the plan that you just put out, that you taught your kid, for example, they've already been exposed to the idea. They've
right,
already thought of it. And so when you talk to them, you're actually eliminating fear by saying, hey, here's the solution. Here's the antidote to that problem.
right.
And also because if you talk to them enough about that, they've also got this general sense that, oh yeah, mom and dad's got this. That they are thinking about my safety and they've got my back.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
it is. It teaches them. Yeah, it's again, it's not to freak them out. It's just to help
yeah.
them understand that, hey, when we run into this situation, this is how we're going to handle it.
Yeah.
And it's important. It's an important lesson because you never know when it may come up.
I
Fortunately,
liked your solution of putting the phone number in the pocket. I spent the year that my kids were 14 and 4 in Malaysia with them so that they could have an international experience. And we went to the Thaipusam March, which is this enormous religious festival in Kuala Lumpur. 1 million people show up.
oh wow,
And so we got a little just a little convention lanyard for the 4-year-old. It's like, my name's Gabriel. My mom's name is this. This is her phone number. My dad's name is this. This is his phone number. And it was right there on his thing, just in case we got separated in these massive throngs.
right,
And as it turned out, he just wanted to sit on my shoulders the whole time. So
right,
we were never more than inches away from each other.
yeah,
Another trick for that, by the way, when you've got kids of a certain age, that age where they're going to be separated from you, but they're not quite old enough to know your phone number cold, or at least you don't think so. Take their favorite device, change the password to your phone number.
Hmm.
They'll know your phone number by the end of the day.
Right. That's true. That's true. That's a good trick. Um, well, let me ask you this one
Yeah,
last question, and then I want to ask about your book a little bit. But
sure thing.
um, for a new parent, maybe the parent that, it could be a parent that just has a brand new baby, maybe a young toddler, maybe somebody that's maybe their child's just now starting to be separate from them as far as their daily activities, going to school or going to preschool, all those kinds of things. Where can we start as parents to protect our kids? What's one of the most important safety areas that you could share with us for maybe those new parents that are worried about that?
So that's a really good question. And we've already talked about the most important thing, which is that communication, making sure that you are the port in the storm. And also pay attention for change. And that's in everything. I'm amazed by how many of the more than 100 people that I've talked to said something along those lines for their area of specificity, their area of specialization. That change is the sign you need to pay attention, and change is the early warning sign of danger.
Hmm.
Metaphor that I like is, your favorite bar, your favorite restaurant. It might be noisy, it might be quiet. The fact that it's noisy tells you nothing about safety. The fact it's quiet tells you nothing about safety. But if your favorite bar is a heavy metal club and you walk in and it's quiet, it's time to pay some pretty close attention, right? If your favorite restaurant is usually quiet and all of a sudden it's really noisy, you need to look up. And if a mariachi band hasn't started playing on the stage, it's time to maybe leave because that change is a sign that you need to pay attention, and that change is a sign of danger. And so we watch for our kids. Are they using language that we didn't use to? And that, I'm not talking necessarily about foul language, but also, are they using jargon from a certain game or subculture that they weren't before? Is there a sudden change in the things that bring them joy? Are they getting less enjoyment out of things that they always have? Are they walking different, talking different, dressing different? And none of these are necessarily a sign of danger, but they might be. And they're certainly a sign to us to pay a little closer attention to see what's going on. And that applies to our kids and also applies to the environment. If we're driving around with our kids, pay a little more attention in traffic, look for that change. Look for, is that car behaving differently than cars are supposed to? You get to the school, you pay attention at the bus ramp. Does everybody appear to be behaving the way that you expect them to at the bus ramp, or does there seem to be a little more tension in the air?
Mhm.
Every environment we go into, and this even applies to travel, right? Where we go into an area where we don't know what to expect, but you watch the locals. Hey, did everybody just leave? Did I walk into a business that I thought was going to be fun, but there are no families here at all? Changes from what you see, changes to your expectations. And so, yeah, if you're going to focus on one thing as a parent, uh, be alert for change in your child, in your environment, in yourself. And that's going to help you link into those instincts that we have, because we are all humanity is, we're stupendous badass survivors. We
Right.
have finely toned instincts for staying alive and protecting our children. It's literally genetically the only thing we're here to do. But we're also socialized in school and by our friends to ignore those instincts.
Right.
And, but yeah, so getting back in touch with those, and one of the best ways to do that is just be alert for change.
Yeah. I think it's super important. It's even for us as adults. We, regardless of our kids, we have to be aware of change and
Yeah.
be aware of our surroundings, be aware of our environment, all those sorts of things. We don't need to live in this little bubble,
Yeah.
but we need to just be aware because things happen and the world is a crazy place, and we just need to be protective of
Yeah.
not only ourselves, but our family.
Exactly. And we're not talking about that head on a swivel, condition yellow as your personality,
Right.
always sit facing the door at a restaurant,
Right.
tactical semper paratus stuff. Just mindful curiosity, tactical curiosity. A friend of mine, mentor of mine, likes to say, "Get your head out of your apps." Right?
True.
Put the phone away, watch the kids, look around, because you will spot the bad guys, but you'll also see the sunset and the puppy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Tell me a little bit about your book.
Sure thing.
What's it about? What's the premise behind it? And then where can
Yeah.
people pick it up?
Safest family on the block. 101 tips, tricks, hacks, and habits to protect your family. It's exactly what it sounds like. I took what I learned from those guys and women, and what I learned from testing it out in the field, as it were, and distilled it down to 101 tips for parents to keep their kids safe. And some of these are kind of conceptual. Like, one of them is just live by example, where you've got to live those safety things that you want your kids to observe, because they might not always listen, but they are always, always watching.
Mhm.
To, a loadout list for your family first aid kit, to little tips and tricks. Like a bodyguard that I interviewed suggested that the next time you buy a pair of sneakers or hiking shoes, you put the new ones on your feet, you take the old ones, you put them in your trunk.
Hmm.
That way, if the car breaks down on date night, your wife can change out of those stilettos and walk to the gas station in comfortable shoes, right? And so you always have good walking shoes in the car. You're driving back from the beach, you're just wearing flip flops. You don't want to walk 3 miles in that. But luckily, you've got the pair of shoes you just retired because you put in your 200 miles on your last ultra marathon,
Right.
and they're there in the back seat. So all those kinds of things. And it's divided into 10 chapters for specific topics. Like there's one on travel safety, one on internet safety, one on school safety, where we do talk about bullying and school shootings. And we've got fire and accident response prevention, emergency preparation. We do have a crime prevention chapter, but it's only one of 10 chapters because although when we think safety, a lot of the time we think about crime prevention, but the real risks to our family are much more in the accident, traffic, online range and area. So yeah, so that's the book, and it's available all the places. It's up there on Amazon. It's up there on Barnes and Noble. It's on my favorite bookstore right now, which is called bookshop.org, which is it acts like Amazon. It's the book will take a couple extra days to get to you. That usually costs a couple extra bucks. But when you sign up on your account, you designate a local bookstore you like. Or if you don't have a local bookstore you like, you designate some other bookstore. Maybe you've got a friend in Indiana that runs a bookstore, or you have a fondness for the bookstore you used to go to in college or whatever. But whatever bookstore you designate, when you buy a book from that website, they get paid as though you had walked in and bought the book there.
Got it.
So
That's
then
good.
that's bookshop.org, and I'm real fond of that.
All right, cool. Well, listen, Jason, it's been a pleasure having you on. A pleasure getting to know you. Thank you for what you do and helping families protect themselves, not only as a family, a unit, but also protecting their kids individually. I think it's super important. I think it's an important topic that maybe we as parents may sometimes overlook and not realize that we're not being as protective as we should be. And also on the flip side of that, maybe being overprotective, and we don't necessarily need to be that way either. So thank you for what you do. Best places for my viewers to look you up and learn a little bit more about you, website, any of those sorts of things.
Safestfamilyontheblock.org is where you can find the information there. Anybody who has questions can just email me at brick.jason@gmail.com. You spell comma there, you don't put in the punctuation. Because I love to nerd out about this stuff. And then finally, you can find me on Facebook. There's about 6 Jason Bricks out on there, but I'm the only one who routinely talks about martial arts and safety, heavy metal music, and tabletop role playing games, usually every day. So it'll be pretty easy to track me down there.
All right, good. Well, I'll make sure. And the podcast that can be found everywhere as well.
Yeah, it's just up there on YouTube, and I've got a service that distributes it out there, so I think it's in all the places through them as well.
All right, cool. Well, thank you very much for being on. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to continuing the friendship, my friend.
Thank you, Bryan. Take care.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, guys, this has been another episode of Dad Up. I want to thank my good friend Jason Brick for being on. If you want to learn a little bit more about him, the links are in the show notes, so you can check them out there. Go to his website. If you want to pick up the book, find better ways to protect not only yourself, but your family, please make sure you do that. And if you are not subscribed to his YouTube channel, his podcast, make sure you do that. And as always, if you're not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, my podcast, please make sure you do that so you don't miss any of the awesome guests that I have on each and every week. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode of Dad Up. Wow, another amazing episode in the books. So much was shared, and I'm truly grateful my guest was able to pour into you to help you elevate your dad game and really dad up. Make sure you bang that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're here, please don't forget to leave me a rating and a review. I always appreciate the feedback. And one last thing, don't forget, your role as a dad is one of the most important roles you have. So if you need a little help or have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on my website at daduptribe.com or at my Instagram page at daduppodcast. Until next time, everyone, Dad Up.